there are websites like Playlist Hunter that try to identify playlists that have Gmail or Instagram handles in them.
Mm-hmm.
Huge red flag for us. So what that usually indicates, and if you've emailed these folks, you'll typically find that most of them are looking for payment in exchange for placement. Top 10 position, $30. Top 20 position, $20, whatever. As soon as you see that, you got to turn your tail and run, because A, you're violating Spotify's terms. And I'm of the opinion that any playlister who does this is probably willing to buy fake followers and fake engagement.
Hey, I'm Graham Farmer, founder of the dance music magazine Data Transmission and Twitch partner, streaming on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays from 1 p.m. On this channel, we share the full interviews from my Twitch streams. But before we jump into this interview, if you can help this video get more reach by giving it a like and a comment, it'd be most appreciated. And don't forget to consider subscribing so you always get notified when we drop new interviews.
Here we go. Oh, he's disappeared. Let's not get him in. There he is. Hey! Jason, how you doing, dude? Good to see you.
Great. I thought I'd give you an intro.
Nice. How's things? How are you? You right?
Yeah. Well, you got me on the 30 million submissions a day. That's more than I can handle.
Oh, no. Oh,
yeah,
shit. I started reading it and I was like, shit, is it 30 million? And then I was like, that's a lot. That's a lot for one day. That's a lot.
Yeah, I don't know if my code could handle that. It's 30 million in 7 years. That's still a good amount. Still
that's
enough.
Mental. Yeah, it's mental. That's loads. That's loads. Congrats, man. First and foremost, that's good. I remember we chatted on my podcast way back before the pandemic. We spoke about it a bit. We've never done it on video, so welcome to Twitch. Welcome to my Twitch channel. Welcome to my Disco shed. I'm excited to talk about the platform, and I was reading through some of the notes, and there's been some mad upgrades as well. So I'm excited to hear about those as well.
Keeps going. It keeps going. I'm excited to share that with your shed heads.
Yeah, shed heads are in the house. They're all in. There's loads of them in the chat. Before we start the streams, we always do something stupid. And I don't know really when this started, but it's been going for a long time now. Basically, because it's lunchtime here in the UK, we have a thing called the meal deal. And basically, it's like you go to one of these supermarkets, like a Tesco's or kind of like a shopping centre, and they'll do a kind of sandwich, something, and a drink. Mine, for example, always used to be the triple kind of breakfast, like 3 sandwiches with like some really unhealthy crisps and probably a full fat Coke. Now it's down to maybe a salad, a water, and something healthy. So we'll ask our audience, what is theirs?
In the time I've spent in the UK, I've definitely taken advantage of that. I think I used to just go with an egg mayo. The chips, I tended to try something new every time.
Yeah.
I mean, I was passing through, right? Got to try the different flavors. And then Diet Coke, pretty boring. Yeah. But I remember those meal deals. Yeah.
It's fun when you get them like American audience, because they've never had them and they're just like, well, I'd have a McDonald's. But I'm glad, I didn't realize you'd been here before. That's great.
My wife's actually, so I've been to the UK 10, 15, 20 times. I don't know.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah.
Wicked.
Yeah.
Today we're going to talk about Summit Hub, and like I said, I'm excited. What I want to do is literally, I want to go through a little release journey with you at some point, and to kind of talk through a journey of how the best to get out of a release. Like if I'm releasing my track this Friday, it's coming out this Friday. When should I start doing that? I want to kind of talk about kind of best practices. I want to talk about kind of like essentials for producers and getting more traction on their releases. But I thought we would start with kind of, let's just understand the platform from your end and how does it work? How do you select creators? And start with a kind of top end, and then we'll work up to that. Is that cool?
Cool. Totally. Okay. Well, to think about the origin of Submit Hub, it's based on my time running Indie Shuffle, which I still run on the side. But the problem I was trying to solve was that we were getting about 300 email pitches a day. And I'm sure you had something similar with your blog.
Yeah. Still get them.
It's unmanageable. And I've seen you talk about this in some of your other stuff too, but people create these demos or submissions at emails, and they don't actually check them. And we were guilty of that. So I think we were siphoning off all these emails. And in the back of my head, I knew there had to be a better way to go through them. And I was also painfully aware of the fact that in 2013, 2014, I sort of stopped discovering new bands. There was so much noise, and I think I just put these blinders on, and we just started reposting the same stuff. And I'm like, new Lana Del Rey, new Kid Cudi, new whatever. and I don't think I was alone there. And so, yeah, I was looking for a better way to do it. And I took some of the coding skills I picked up with Indie Shuffle and threw together a really simple submission form, if you will. So it was the artist name, song title, and then you could either put in your SoundCloud or your YouTube. And the advantage was that for me, as a curator, it all came through in a very standardized feed with a thumb up button, which meant I was going to blog it, and a thumb down button, which meant not so into it. And yeah, the idea kind of took off. So we turned 7 2 weeks ago, and I threw up some interesting stats at the time, but I think within the first month we had a couple thousand submissions already, which is pretty cool for a new website. And it's just grown and grown since then. So let's see, 7 years of Submit Hub. Here we go. There were 5,000 submissions in the first month. So the idea was, yeah, it was a pretty popular concept, I guess, or at least the problem was pervasive to the point that people wanted a solution. And in the first year, there were 660,000 submissions. So,
do you know what? I say no way, but I actually can believe that because I know how many tracks I get sent every week. Like, I reckon I probably get. Well, we did a challenge while I was away. I switched my email off for 3 or 4 days over the summer while I was away for a festival, and I came back and I had 1,500 emails over 4 or 5 days.
Jeez, all right. Whoa. So I'll tell you a trick I did there actually to reduce that was I emailed MailChimp and Sendinblue and a couple of the other big mailing list companies, and I told them to blacklist my email address. So at this point, if anyone uses one of those services to try and email Indie Shuffle, it just doesn't work. It makes a huge difference. So then you just eliminate all of the newsletter ones, and you can kind of boil it back down to the people who are contacting you directly. It helps.
Yeah, mine are mostly like in-flight emails. People that got me on their in-flight because I get so many from in-flight. It's ridiculous. But then I have this crazy filter system on my inbox where I use a thing called Postbox, and basically I have all these rules. And basically, when I switch my Postbox on, it just takes them all my emails and sticks them in all these random. I have so many folders, and every PR company has its own folder, and it literally just goes and sticks them all in different folders, and it sorts me out a treat. I try not to. When I'm away for like that many days, I'll just not touch email on my phone. Just wait till I get back, and then let it do its thing. You know, it definitely reduces.
Yeah, it can be mental. So SubmitHub's purpose was to solve exactly that problem for curators, right? The emails were unmanageable, and it's just not an efficient way to go through demos. So within the first year, we'd also signed up more than 300 curators. Most of them were Hype Machine blogs that I reached out to. So this is 2015. Hype Machine was still pretty big. And we to be honest, in that first year, we weren't so focused on the quality of the curators we were signing up, right? We were going after these Hype Machine blogs. In a way, we didn't even have to worry that much because most of these guys were doing it because they loved music and wanted to share music and discover music. And I think that group of people who were simply trying to hustle and take advantage of money were on SoundCloud. So back in 2015, like the whole game was selling SoundCloud reposting, a whole bunch of fake followers, fake this, fake that. And that's where the hustle was. And the hustle people weren't doing blogs. So the first group of people that we really signed up to the platform did have good intentions in mind. And then over the years, we had to learn how to curate the curators and deal with all the people who were not there to necessarily discover and share music, but rather they were there because they heard they could earn some money. So that's been one of the major growing points of Submit Hub, and we can dive into that. We got 2 hours. 2 hours?
Yeah, it's great fun.
Yeah.
So how do we curate the curators? Like, that's mental. How does that happen? How do you select them?
Right. So I can get into it. I'll get into it. The first way that people started taking advantage of us is that they would approve songs to be shared and then never share them. And we weren't actually keeping track of the deliverable. So if you were on Submit Hub, you could earn 50 cents per submission. And if you said no to the song, you had to explain why and listen for a certain amount of time. If you said yes to the song, you still got that 50 cents. And for the first year or so, we weren't actually tracking the way that people were sharing it. And that was a pretty big step. So one of the things I had to quickly roll out in code was a sort of a two-step process, which you've probably seen, where you approve a song. It then goes into sort of this queue that you then have to mark as shared. And once you've marked as shared, your money gets released. So we had issues with people who would approve these songs, cash out all their money, and never actually share them. So we were sort of dead in the water there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, real. That's just ridiculous.
Another issue we had to deal with was impersonations. So we were very excited when some of the bigger names, DJ Mag Germany, signed up. And they gave us this whole spiel about how they were opening up a subsidiary and they were doing this magazine and all that. And it all just sort of ended up unraveling a few months later, where we realized they totally pulled our leg. And so we had to, that was one of the early, this is probably in 2015 as well, where we had to learn that we need to do better vetting of the people who join. So from there, we sort of stepped it up a level and started to do more of that. On the blogging side, most people are pretty cool. So some of the day-to-day stuff that we're focused on is we've got, they're good people.
Yay to the bloggers.
Yeah. Look, they tend to be a more old school group, right? You don't see a lot of new blogs popping up. It's not what people do. They start Spotify playlists. So we find that most of the bloggers are an older demographic. And by that, I mean, like, middle-aged at this point. I started in my early 20s, but here I am. So they're more trustworthy, but what we really look for with blogs these days is people who are writing content. So we don't mind as much about their engagement per se. We're not looking at how many followers they have on Facebook and what the engagement's like and how many visitors they have. What we're really looking for is the content, because I think that the value a blogger can deliver in 2022 is more about telling the story behind a song and also creating evergreen content that a blog can be shared and also shows up on Google as part of your SEO strategy. So these days we're pretty smooth on the blogs. Most of our issues are with bloggers who don't write properly. So if you want to join Submit Hub as a blogger, the way to do it is to have a blog where you actually write content. Do you want me to keep going with the curators?
Yeah, no, cool. That's cool. Yeah, go keep going. Yeah. So I got that. That's cool. Blog. Yeah, that makes sense. Are there still blogs that do that? I guess. I hope they are. I haven't done mine. Oh yeah, we write less and less.
We've got over 300 active bloggers. Most of them are in what we call the Really Good Bloggers program, and to be in that, they actually have to write content. So you cannot be in the program if you do sort of a post that has 10 songs with no description. We're looking for people who focus on a song itself. So yeah, it still exists, and you can find them on Submit Hub. You can also find them on other platforms. So there's Muso Soup. I don't know if you've bumped into them. But their setup is basically, so they've got there's this payola. So they believe that bloggers are journalists and therefore you should pay them. So if you want them to write about your song, they'll tell you how much you have to pay them and then they'll write about your song.
Cool.
Sounds like payola, but they insist it's not payola because it's actually just paying someone for doing work.
Yeah, paying for their time.
Yeah, I still think it's payola.
Everyone's got to eat,
anyway.
And everyone's got to pay the rent, and everyone's got to eat. And as there's no ad revenue, I feel where they're at. I see both sides, and as someone that I feel where they're at. I feel there's a lot of people taking advantage of stuff for free.
As long as it's closed. So if you point out that the content you've written was part of a promotional campaign, it doesn't qualify as payola anymore. It's now a paid content or promoted content or whatever. So there's a gray area there, and there's a lot of debate to be had. We're actually rolling out something soon on Submit Hub that will allow you to get in-depth reviews of EPs and albums. And it is a similar model where these curators will set their price for this in-depth review, and then you can buy it from them. And necessarily come with published coverage, but some of them will, and they will have to disclose that there was money involved. So
that's cool.
Anyway.
No, it's fine. I think there's a massive issue with kind of people pitching for stuff for free and just expecting blogs to write it because they're I get, like I said, on a Friday I get 90 emails of people going, can you write about this track? And it takes me 25 minutes to write about every track, and if I like, even if I like 10 of them, that's my whole day gone and I've not earned a cent. So
never mind the 3 minutes per email they're expecting you to spend. So that's what, 270 minutes. That's 4.5 hours
not
going to
earning
email.
a penny. Not earning a penny, and I've still got to pay the rent, and I've still got to pay the thing. So I think there's a massive problem with publicity and press and kind of blogs, and so I'm all for people being able to pay for content.
Yeah, look, well, so I mean, our model is a bit different, right? You're paying for the consideration, and then the curators earn their money over time, considering multiple songs. And the idea is that you're not being paid for the actual content that you're sharing, so you don't get paid more if you say yes. And anyway, that model seems to work.
The thing I don't understand, the thing that really gets me as well is you can pay for an Instagram influencer or a TikTok influencer to post a piece of content, but they don't have to disclose whether they paid for it for free. But when it comes to a blog, the blog has to say that it's written for free and written paid for. And it seems like there's a massive double standard where you're paying for these influencers, but they don't have to say that you've been paid for. But the blog is just a written influencer.
100%, yeah. I'm from that sort of old school blogging mentality where the idea is that your reputation is largely built on your integrity and ability to discover and champion new acts. And so
Agreed.
Through the time that I've been blogging, this idea of payola, or the idea that someone can simply pay their way onto a blog, has always sort of been shunned. So you're right, there's absolutely a double standard. The influencer community has built their entire industry around this, essentially what we would consider payola, right? So I think for me, that where that line gets drawn is that there's an expectation with music curators that you're actually curating music and you're doing it for quality. Whereas with influencers, they don't care about the music and they're not doing it for the music, and they don't, so I do agree with you. It's a double standard.
I don't know. There are some definite music influencers that I know that have got pages and they really care about what they're posting, but you still have to pay for it. Like I know people like Techno Bible. We're doing a campaign with them at the moment, and they won't. You send them a whole load of a video that are around the track, and you have to. They'll select the one that works best for their audience because they know their audience. They know what's going to work for their audience. But again, it's still an Instagram page. And if I said that from a like, if I'm doing the same from a blog point of view, like I get it. I get why. I get the whole curate. Like I'm from the blog area as well, where it was expected to your money would come from maybe your ads or your something else or your event media deals or something that would pay the bills. But like over that time, I've been data transmission's 15 years old next year, and over that time, models have changed. Standards have changed. Influencers have arrived. People don't spend their money on advertising; they spend it on Facebook ads, and now the blogs are still expected to do the same work, but essentially with no return. And it's just not a viable option for anyway.
It's a slippery slope with a lot of different angles. There are plenty of blogs who are now asking for paid placement. You won't find them on Submit Hub. We won't work with them, but you can easily go to Muso Soup, which is another website where you can simply pay. Okay. If you do not pay, they will not cover your music. It's as simple as that. They won't cover music that people don't pay for. So in my mind,
I'm glad there's both options as well. I'm glad that's there is a possible for both. That's great. I didn't realize that was available.
Yeah, well, we'll have something similar on Submit Hub soon, and for me, I think it's still going to be important to disclose that it was part of a promotional campaign. We're not gonna say explicitly like this was $20, but it's going to be, we're going to ask for some sort of disclosure that it's. I like the framing of this article as part of Maggie's. Sorry to pick on you, Maggie. Part of Maggie's promotional campaign Maggie. For her new song. So I sort of thought, that's a subtle way of disclosing that yes, this was part of a promotional campaign without explicitly saying this was paid for. So we'll be exploring that slowly. It is sort of the adaptation or evolution of the industry, and we got to kind of keep our fingers on the pulse, make sure we're still in it.
Yeah. Cool. Wicked. So that's good to hear. So that's how you create your blogs. How do you do your Spotify playlist, your I noticed you
Yeah.
are now doing Instagram and TikTok. How do we curate? How do we choose those ones?
Right. So Spotify, we can go into that one next. That was a difficult one. So in the early days of Spotify on Submit Hub, which was about 2017, the metrics I was working with, I was very excited about coding, and Spotify has a very accessible API.
Mhm.
And so I was just pulling all of the information I could from there. And the metric we were looking at was the number of followers that each playlist has. Seemed like a logical one. That was also the only information available at the time. So I went, we rolled this out. We had a couple hundred Spotify playlisters on there. And then a guy named Ari Herstand, who runs something called Ari's Take out in LA, also does a lot of marketing and music advice. He kind of did a scathing article or review of Submit Hub, and his main gripe, one of his main gripes, was that the Spotify playlists were based on the number of followers, or at least that's the only information we provided, and that really gives no indication of how engaged a playlist actually is. So he would point out, that someone might buy 100,000 followers and actually generate you 0 listeners. And so my reaction was, oh crap, you can even see that? How do I get that information? It's not part of Spotify's API. So after a couple months, I figured out that the artists themselves have access to listener data about the playlists that have shared them. So I don't know if you've ever seen an artist's Spotify dashboard. You probably have, right? And you can go in there and you can see all the playlists you've been added to, and you can look at how many listeners and streams they've generated for you in the last 24 hours, week, 28 days, or all time since 2015 was their metric. And so that was sort of the gold mine I was after. So we actually started paying artists who had been shared by playlisters to give us that data. 3 weeks after they'd been shared, we'd reach out, we'd say, hey, look, we're trying to figure out how many listeners you got from these guys. Is there any way that you can export your Spotify data and share it with us? And it worked. So a lot of people have shared that data. I think actually at this point we have close to 1 million. We have more than 1 million data points, I think, around listeners and playlists. So
that's sick.
Submit Hub is now the only real website you can go to for this. I mean, I know you're familiar with Chartmetric. They've got great data on historical growth of playlists, but they don't get the listener information because Spotify doesn't make that public. So anything they do show is going to be an estimation. And at this point, we're the only ones who actually show that info. And that became a crucial factor in the vetting of these playlisters to determine whether they could join Submit Hub or not. And we're also looking at a lot of different metrics there as well. So growth is one that anyone can look at, especially using Chartmetric. So if you identify a playlist that has sudden spikes or drops in their followers, usually a bit of a red flag. Another one that's interesting is if you have a playlister who's got, say they've got 5 playlists and all of them have 10,000 followers, kind of sketchy.
Yeah.
It's just that's not a natural growth pattern, right? Generic names like New Music Friday or Best Pop Hits. These are also red flags that we're looking for. So today when Spotify playlist applies to join, well, look, it's none of these are standalone things, right? You have to kind of factor them all into the equation. Here's another one, which you're familiar with. There are websites like Playlist Hunter that try to identify playlists that have Gmail or Instagram handles in them.
Mm-hmm.
Huge red flag for us. So what that usually indicates, and if you've emailed these folks, you'll typically find that most of them are looking for payment in exchange for placement. Top 10 position, $30. Top 20 position, $20, whatever. As soon as you see that, you got to turn your tail and run because A, you're violating Spotify's terms. And I'm of the opinion that any playlister who does this is probably willing to buy fake followers and fake engagement and likely doesn't have actual music in mind. And so what's going to happen is that you're not only going to violate the terms and potentially expose yourself to fake listeners, but you're also going to put yourself in a bit of a muddy playlist that is not necessarily centered around the quality of music, but has a lot to do with who paid to get in. And so Spotify is going to start seeing your songs associated with, let's say you are making techno and you're next to a folk song and then a commercial song and an Afrobeat song, and it confuses Spotify's algorithm. So in our mind, you add all of those red flags together, and that's an easy way to try and filter out. So about 80% of the playlisters who apply to join Submit Hub get rejected. And it's usually a combination of these factors, not necessarily one. You can't speak in absolutes, right? There are some people who have legitimate playlists and charge for placement. That doesn't automatically mean that they're faking it, but it still means we don't want to work with you because we don't want to fall on the wrong side of Spotify's policy, right? There's too much on the line for us. So once they're on Submit Hub, then we continue to look for all of these factors. Things like putting too many songs in your playlist, your engagement drops off a cliff, you have sudden spikes.
How many songs is too many songs?
We tend to say more than 100 is going to be too many. And in my mind, a good range is between 50 to 70. It can depend on your playlist style and also your SEO rank and whatnot. If there's a playlist that has 300 songs, but also they show up number 2 when you search for techno, that's not necessarily going to be a red flag. Again, we're looking for multiple sort of factors here. But let's say we notice that a playlist is struggling and they're only getting 5 or 10 listeners a song. One of the easier ways to pop that up a little bit is to cull some of the songs that you don't necessarily love as much. So you're increasing the quality of your playlist, but you're also spreading, many of these guys are doing Instagram ads to keep their playlists engaged. And so then you're spreading those ads across fewer songs, which gets each of them individually more plays, keeps people happy, makes your profile on Submit Hub looks better, and it's generally just better for the ecosystem. So
that's good.
We're constantly looking for ways to I suppose coach playlisters on best practices, as well as identify people who might have switched to the dog side, if you will. So someone, we see this sometimes where we reach out and we say, hey, it looks like your engagement's faltering. Maybe run some Instagram ads, and then they go on Fiverr and they pay someone for organic plays, and boom, you get booted. We can usually pick that up within 5 minutes. So the code that I'm running
ads
is really...
ads would be nice like that, whereas a thing would be like that.
Absolutely, yeah. And then usually what you see is after these big spikes, you see sort of a nosedive. So we tend to look for that slow and steady growth. Another one that is internally that we're looking for is when people flatline. So you've had growth, and then you flatline. That's usually a sign that you've stopped promoting your playlist. So we're constantly, I do hear people bring up that, I paid a bunch of money on Submit Hub and everyone rejected me, and the 3 people who did say yes had no listeners on their playlist. It happens. It's not the norm. The people who get plays don't complain, but the people who don't get plays do. And we do actively try to bring that bar up. So some of the more recent rules is actually that they cannot even properly share to a playlist that has less than 10 listeners. So we've taken all these steps along the way to kind of learn how to improve the experience for artists, as well as keep playlisters on top of their game, so to speak.
Okay, so we need to, gang, Loz, we need to change our New Music Friday playlist to something else because we can't apparently and we need to color load. We need to color load records because we've got so many records in our playlist by the sounds of it.
Look, but so something like yours is going to work because yours is more associated with the brand, right? And so when you look at that, you're going, okay, well, this is data transmission. They've got a fan base, and so this playlist is targeted to their fan base. But when you see, you see a lot of these guys who fake it, who sell, packages like the gold package and the platinum package and the whatever. And you see these guys on there, and they often have these super generic playlists that are essentially copying Spotify's names. You often have a little Spotify logo in the corner, which is so a violation of Spotify's policy. But they're essentially trying to trick artists into believing that they're legitimate. And ultimately what happens is the artist shells over the money, they get this huge bump in streams, and then a couple months later, their distributor comes along and says, hey, just a heads up, we've removed all your songs from Spotify and you're not getting paid. So it sucks. And we need to work really hard to make sure that that's not something that artists are exposing themselves to when they use Submit Hub. So that's cool. I like that point. I like that point about the it can just affect the AI, like you're saying. It's just, if you're being in there with a folk, that's going to affect anything AI driven because it won't know where to put you. Yeah, I'm a big believer in niche playlists. So getting 5 listeners from melodic techno or like death metal or whatever, as long as they're in your niche, you are doing yourself a favor by teaching Spotify's algorithm where to play you. So that's one of the reasons we don't kick off people who are, I suppose, underperforming relative to big numbers, because 10 listeners in a hyper-focused niche can do you a world of good when it comes to Spotify's algorithms.
So we talked about blogs, we talked about Spotify playlist. I noticed you now putting on Instagram and kind of influencers. Tell me about these.
Right. This started in late 2018, early 2019. I think the buzz was TikTok. Everyone was talking about how TikTok was the kingmaker of music. And so naturally we're following the trends and trying to stay on top of everything. So we began integrating influencers into Submit Hub. It's been a long and bumpy process. Much of it much of the difficulty is that influencers are not primed to the music industry. They don't know how it works, and they're simply joining Submit Hub because they've heard they can make money sharing music. So we've attracted a lot of sour apples, if you will, people who've tried to take advantage of artists, take advantage of Submit Hub, and gosh, it's been a long process. But I think we're actually at a really good point now in terms of I mentioned all these steps that we take to verify our Spotify playlisters and make sure that they're behaving. We finally, after 3 years, got all the systems in place on the influencer side to do the same. So with influencers, one of the first things we learned, one of the first things we learned we had to teach artists was that it's not going to help you go viral. It's not going to blow you up. Buying your way into virality is next to impossible, and Submit Hub is not going to provide that for you. So we needed to identify the ways that you can use influencer submissions to help you out. And I think there are two. So the first one is to kind of fake it until you make it. So the idea here is that you're filling up your song feed on TikTok or Instagram so that if someone clicks on the song, they actually see that there's a bunch of videos there and you don't look like your song was a complete failure. We tend to see this one's pretty popular with major labels. So what they'll do is they'll go to an agency and spend a ton of money to get a few big influencer shares. And then what they need to do is just fluff up that feed a little bit, bulk it up, and make it look like there's action. So they'll come on Submit Hub, and we're dealing with micro influencers. So the prices are between $1 and $100. Most of them are in that $1 to $10 range. So it's really cheap. And they'll come along and buy 200 videos. It's all payola, as we discussed. And that sort of bulks up their feed. So that's one strategy that can be useful. The other one is to think of it as if you are buying people or paying people to create content to your song, like miniature music videos. So if you can come up with a theme or something for them to follow, some trend, whatever it is, you can then leverage that to share with your existing fan base. So you got these little pieces of content. Personally, I think sharing a Spotify playlist is kind of silly as an artist. Like, yo, go check me out. I'm number 17. Oh, never mind. I was, but they've moved. Oh, never mind. I'm out of the playlist now. Like, it's just not a great, it's not a great experience for your fans. Whereas a blog post is a great thing to share. It's validation, someone writing about your song. It's good for your fans. And similarly, an influencer piece of content, so be it a TikTok video or an Instagram reel, can also be something that's better to share with your fan base. So you're buying miniature music videos from people. So that's kind of the way that we position it. The other thing I think is very important with influencer campaigns, be them on Submit Hub or anywhere else, is I don't think you should do them unless you yourself are actually interacting with and part of TikTok. Like if you don't have a TikTok account and you're not creating content on TikTok and you don't live and breathe TikTok, don't waste your time on it. Same with Instagram. So what we see is we do unfortunately see a lot of artists come in, they basically give up on the curator side because they're not getting any bites. It's tough out there, right? 100,000 songs a day on Spotify. And then they switch to the influencer side and they can just pay their way. So they get 10 videos and then they go, okay, now what? And you got to be like, okay, well, do you have what's your TikTok? And I'm like, oh, I haven't made one yet. So, yeah, it's been a bit of a learning curve there. And it hasn't taken off the way many people expected it to. So, you know what happened was music blogs were the the king and queen makers, right? If you back in 2008, 2009, or 2012 got enough steam on Hype Machine, you were going to be headlining or at least booked for Coachella or Bonnaroo or Glastonbury or whatever the heck festival there is out there. It was actually possible back then. Then Spotify playlists came along and everyone thought this was going to be it. This was going to take things over. And it did become the focus, but it never had the same impact that those blogs used to have. Now TikTok's here as well. And so everyone was buzzing in 2019, 2020, thinking TikTok's going to take over the world, right? This is it. This is how people discover music. This is what's going on. And from my perspective, it hasn't lived up to that expectation. And what it's done instead is it's just added yet another bit of noise to the infinite options of discovering music. And so I don't know if we're ever going to see anything as good as music blogs in our lifetime in terms of a singular voice that could really propel an artist into some sort of spotlight. So yeah, the TikTok and Instagram side, it's about 30% of our submissions now, which is nothing to laugh at, but it's just chugging along smoothly. And we've got a ton of systems in place that I've coded just to verify that they're sharing the right song, they're keeping the songs up, they are actually getting engagement. So the prices are based on the engagement that they're getting. They can't really come in and set their own price. It's a fairly well-oiled machine at this point. So I've actually moved on to a completely different project, and I'm done with the influencer side. I'm done for now. It's taken up the last 3 years.
Has there been success stories from it? Are they people using, is it being regulated?
Yeah, look, I'm always weary to get into success stories. I've had people ask, can you name an artist who's made it big because of Submit Hub? And the answer is no, I cannot and don't want to, because to boil any artist's success down to a singular thing is disingenuous. It takes a lot more than that, especially over the last 10 years, if you want to break out and be successful. So there are many artists who've sort of started or assisted the snowball effect of growing themselves through particularly the curator side. But that in and of itself is not going to carry them. You really need exceptional music, an exceptional story, something that people can relate to and bond with. So it's still always that complete package. And I'm a strong believer that Submit Hub is best used as part of an ongoing multi-pronged approach to music promotion, because you never know where the bites are going to come and how they're going to interact with each other and grow. So on the influencer side, we have had a few successes. There's an artist named Arya who managed to turn essentially 300 posts. He bought 300 videos. Today has something close to 60,000 videos from that. And that's all come directly from Submit Hub. But this is the exception and not the norm. And he did something really clever. The song title was Broken Hearted, and he paid some guy on Fiverr to create a game on TikTok. Apparently you can just create games and upload them. I don't know.
Wow.
But he
I didn't know you
created
could do this. This is cool.
Yeah. I mean, so it's sort of open source in a way. Like people can upload filters, right? And you can also upload games. And so they created this game where you had to like tap on these broken hearts until you did something. And that's actually what really helped it blow up. So, he got these 200 or 300 people to follow this thing where they had to use the game, and then their fans started using it as well. So it does take some out of the box thinking if you want to do that. I'm not the type of person who like oversells or promotes the platform, because I think what we're really effective at is creating connections, doing it transparently, and making sure that you're not exposing yourself to anything untoward. But we can't guarantee success. I mean, we're just giving you access to these people. So, again, 100,000 songs a day, and how many of them get any steam?
How many of them even get a listen? That's the thing. Apart from their mum, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, God, I'd be curious to know out of all the songs released every day, how many of them pass 10,000 streams? And I bet the answer is shockingly low.
I bet.
Like under 1%.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet.
And that's
Okay,
not something else. I don't know. That's not our fault.
The other thing, I
It's
guess,
tough.
with success, the whole success thing is one person's success against another person's success. Like one person's success could be 1,000 streams, and the other one's could be 100,000 streams. And then if you've helped them get that success, then that's, I guess, is, you know, it's all cute, kind of.
It's still some valid. Yeah, you're looking for validation, I guess. You put a lot of work in, spend a lot of money, making music, and for no one to hear it is rough. So it helps with that, but yeah, it's difficult out there.
Okay, so we talked about blogs, Spotify, influencers. Are we? Where else can we pitch to? Can we pitch to radio? Can we pitch to YouTube? Like, what else is happening?
Yeah. So YouTube is still a pretty good one. They claim to be the largest music streaming platform in the world, and I guess that's technically true, even though most people don't view them necessarily as a streaming platform, and even though they have YouTube Music. What we see is that on YouTube, you can generally still pick up 10,000, 100,000, even 1 million plays on a song, depending on how good that YouTuber is at taking advantage of the algorithm. So I would say it's a diminishing space because YouTube has taken a lot of steps to demonetize these YouTubers, and that's kind of what drove a lot of them to do what they were doing. So YouTube has pushed things towards having one piece of content. You used to have 10 videos per song, right? And I can understand from YouTube's perspective how that's not ideal. So they have reduced a lot of these YouTube channels, but I do think it's still a good way to expose yourself to a large audience, and there is still quite a lot of flow through on YouTube to Spotify. So TikTok and Instagram they don't go to, like, it's just a bad funnel. YouTube is a pretty good funnel for that type of stuff. And a lot of those YouTubers also have their own Spotify playlists that are genuinely pretty well engaged. So YouTube has been on Submit Hub for a long time, before playlists, and continues to be a pretty big one. But I would say we're not signing up that many new channels. It's just not what people are launching as far as curation goes. The SoundCloud channels we are phasing out. I think we've got about 5 left. We used to have 50 plus.
No way.
Yeah. There are still some genres that do okay on SoundCloud and still some niche communities that exist. But generally the platform has diminished a lot, and we find that reposting is not the most effective or trackable way of sharing music. So with a blog post, you get a tangible article. With Spotify, we can give you estimates on number of listeners before you send, and then at the end, you actually get to see the listeners in your Spotify dashboard. With YouTube, you get plays. With SoundCloud, someone reposts your song, it's hard to track, right? So we're just generally, and also people aren't doing it as much. I would say that most of those SoundCloud channels pivoted into Spotify when the SoundCloud funds dried up. So those were the guys charging $20 a repost. They all switched over to Spotify. So we still have some SoundCloud people, but I think the days are numbered in terms of keeping that on the platform.
That's super interesting. We've had our biggest year to date on SoundCloud, and
really,
yeah, I've done more streams this year. I did more last year. I did 10 million streams in a year, and that was 4 million the year before, and this year I'm going to do 12 million. I've earned more money off SoundCloud than any other year from uploads. Yeah, it's been great. I love SoundCloud, and we've now got 6 channels in different genres, and I think it's still our heaviest platform for us, that's mental to hear that. Yeah,
well, that's why I preface it by saying there are definitely areas of SoundCloud that are still doing well. We just find that overall it's a less and less in terms of demand from artists, so it's not what they're necessarily looking to be shared on.
Oh yeah,
and generally, I've just lost a lot of my love affair with SoundCloud ended many years ago. So maybe it's a personal bias. We had a few chats with them. At one point, they were lightly toying with the idea of buying Submit Hub, and I didn't want to work with them, and the bridge got burned by me. So,
Okay.
but that I don't think that actually has anything to do with.
He has lost that loving feeling, hasn't he? Surround sound. He has lost.
Yeah. It's one of my less proud moments, but I was on a phone call with I'll share it, whatever. I was on a phone call with a team of SoundCloud's executives, about 10 of them, and they were talking about Submit Hub, trying to get an idea of how it works, and then the idea of buying it came up, and I said, well, that's cool, but I don't think you guys could afford it, and that was the wrong thing to say. And things devolved very quickly from there. But that was 3 or 4 years ago when they were going through their troubles financially. So anyway, I do still owe them a mountain of gratitude, because music blogging wouldn't have been what it was without SoundCloud, and really they provided an incredible platform for music blogs to share with. Anyway, that wasn't my best moment. Anyway,
nice.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Radio. Oh, radio is an interesting one.
Yeah, tell me about that.
We thought radio was going to be it for a while. There was a point where we earnestly tried to sign up as many college radio stations as we could. We sort of redeveloped and added a whole bunch of functionality on Submit Hub that would support them. And then none of them signed up. We couldn't convince any of them to do it. And in many cases, it was because college radio stations are structured such that they tend to have someone who's the head of the station and in charge of all of these things. And you got to go through them. And when we were doing this, the majority of those people that we were bumping into were in their 50s and had been at the college radio station since they started there in the 70s. And they've got their systems in place, and this isn't the right thing for it. And so it became really difficult to sign these guys up. Meanwhile, we had infinite number of digital radio stations all scrambling to sign up. And they don't have the same quality in my mind. A lot of them, they just chuck songs in a playlist and just have it looping on in the background, right? So we, again, on radio, it's been this experiment. I think we've got about 60 radio stations on Submit Hub. Some of them are genuinely pretty good and are transmitted on an FM frequency, but it's a difficult thing to track the deliverable of, right? You get picked up by a Swiss radio station. Okay, so now you have to figure out the time zone, tune in, listen to the whole show, and then go, oh shit, well, I guess it wasn't that episode. Let me try the next one. It's difficult. And then all those online digital ones, the tune in and all that type of stuff, those tend to be pretty low effort is probably a way to describe it in terms of the way that they get shared. And then the return for artists is negligible with radio as well. It's hard to tell how many people heard it, if any, and then the flow through from that also doesn't exist. So we're finding more and more that radio doesn't necessarily fit the structure of Submit Hub. And that's not to say that there aren't very passionate radio disc jockeys out there. Again, it's one of those experiments that we've tried, we've been pushing for years, and at some point we might pack in the bag. Look, all of them are cheap. They're all at one credit. Radio and SoundCloud cannot. I don't know if you've noticed on Submit Hub, there's different price tiering, right? You can have 1, 2, or 3 credits. To get up to those next tiers, you actually have to pass a whole bunch of rules and thresholds and benchmarks. And if you do pass those, then you can apply for a price increase. And we don't give those to SoundCloud or radio. It's just, it doesn't make sense. No way. And also the demand isn't there. They're not the ones getting 100 submissions a day through Submit Hub. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I know with our radio station, I guess like you would add me as the radio person, but I don't choose any of the songs on our radio station. All of our hosts choose what's on their shows, and therefore you'd have to add 130 different hosts just to be a data transmission.
We tried,
and that's just impossible. That's just a crazy amount. That's just okay.
We found also that most you probably know this, right? A lot of those guys running those shows are doing it as a hobby, and many of them flake out, right? They do 2 or 3 shows and then it's just not right for them. And so the idea of getting those guys to actually log in and check their submissions every day and get into it proved very difficult. So yeah, it didn't work. So yeah, we're sticking to Spotify, influencers, and blogs. That's really been where the demand is, and those are also the more easy things to deliver.
That's cool. Is there anything else we're missing? Like, what's hot or not? How do we do? I'm reading the features. I'm reading features. I'm just kind of looking down and seeing which features we've missed and which ones we haven't. Tell me about hot or not.
Cool. We missed hot or not. Yeah. So and the other one we can touch on is upcoming features. But so hot or not.
Do that.
Hot or not, I threw together in about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. I smoked a joint and I was just like, I got this idea. and I coded the whole thing in about 24 to 48 hours. So it was wicked. And the idea was simply that artists rate each other's songs. And if you want your song to get rated, you have to rate other artists' songs. So that's really what Hot or Not is at this point. For every 10 songs you listen to, you can submit your song to be rated 7 times. So there's a bit of an offset there because people can actually buy their way in. If you don't want to sit there and rate other people's songs, you can use premium credits to just say, cool, give me 50 reviews. So that offset helps cover that. And then as Skeleton Keys 100 has just pointed out, a lot of artists use Submit Hub because we pay them a mediocre amount of money. But if you leave feedback for other artists, for every 20 feedbacks you write, you will get not only 14 ratings of your own song, 7 times 2, but you'll also get a premium credit. And so we see a lot of artists who will go in and rate 100 songs a day, which gets them 5 credits, also gets them 70 ratings on their own song. That means that you're exposing your song to a lot of other artists and you're getting listens to it. I mean, those people are actually there listening. You're also getting feedback on every single one of them because feedback is now a requirement of Hot or Not, and you're earning premium credits. So it's a pretty cool ecosystem for artists to rate each other. And you can also, one of the more recent features I added there was it's really easy to add songs to your playlists. So what you'll see is that if your song is circulating through Hot or Not, you'll start to get people adding you to their it's just a random artist who's got a small playlist, but they're adding you to their playlist. And so you're getting ads there as well.
It's a big moment.
Yeah, it's a cool side of Submit Hub. I don't give it that much love. It's not like we actually break even. So I think off the top of my head, I give out about 300 credits a day, and people skip the line with about 300 credits a day. So it cancels out.
Okay.
They're definitely, for 5 credits, you can get 50 reviews. It's a pretty good, cheap way to do it. So people do that a lot. So that's Hot or Not. What's this? So someone was saying, I'm surprised Submit Hub doesn't have curators who are known DJs or radio DJs. Plugging and promo. We have explored plugging and promo. I'm not 100% familiar with it, which is also one reason I tend to not dive into projects that I don't understand. But my other problem with the plugging and the DJ stuff is, my understanding is that the concept is that you're hoping the DJ will play you at their gigs or live in a bar, wherever it is that they play. And that's really hard to track. And so for us, the tracking is important to ensure that people aren't abusing the system. We don't want to have people come in and say, I'm going to share your song with no intention of actually sharing it. And if we can't prove that they have delivered something, generally it's probably not the best idea to feature. So I've steered clear of plugging. And also sync is another big one, right? You've got all these guys who can help sync your songs to soundtracks. And it's another one that I explored. And we again steered clear of because I think what will inevitably happen is they're all going to say, yeah, I love your song. I'm going to pitch it. And then it's just, but they said, do they actually sit down at the meeting with Netflix and pitch this song? Or if they just got it, I sent Netflix a 100-song playlist. I don't know how it's difficult. So yeah, that's Hot or Not and a tangent.
That's very cool. Very cool. I like the whole kind of it has to be proved. It makes a lot of sense because a lot of the time it's people just sharing stuff and it's someone said, what's it say? I heard you can pay curators to get on playlists. Heard that you could play.
Not through Submit Hub.
You can, but it's not advisable.
Yeah, definitely don't do that. L'amour disco. We touched on it at the start of the stream, but it's violating Spotify's policy. It puts you at risk of being exposed to fake listeners and bots, because a lot of those guys who do accept payment are also open to doing other shady things. So yeah, steer clear of it. We don't work with any playlists on SubmitHub who do that. It's strictly against our policy. And if we do encounter anyone who is on the side running a little hustle, they end up getting kicked off SubmitHub. And we're checking. Yeah.
Yeah, may ruin. Yeah, exactly.
And then someone,
may ruin you. Come.
Planeted asked for a feature to be able to see which curators you already sent your track to. Planeted.
Yes.
That's actually there. So if you submit the same song, those curators are automatically hidden. And there's a filter in the sidebar where you can choose to make them visible. And then there's an additional filter where you can choose to actually resend to them. So sometimes curators don't respond within the 48 hours, and you can resend to them if you want. But the idea is that if you've already sent to someone, there's a 95% response rate on the site. And so we're going to hide them by default because you've already sent to them. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned earlier about playlists when you were saying about the kind of Gmail in playlist, that most of those will be paid for because they've got their Gmail in there. Is that kind of, have you seen that lots? Is that kind of known? Is that like, would you not email them ones at all? Like there are all these, obviously, like you said, about Playlist Hunter and Playlist Supply that allow you to find playlists. Kind of
look, there's no harm in emailing them, right? Some of them will do it because they love the music. It's like going back to the blogging days where you would send out 500 emails and hope for 3 responses. And so this route, you'll send out 500 emails and you're hoping for 3 legitimate responses, because you're probably going to get a ton of people who are going to come into the mix and ask you for money. So look, it doesn't hurt, but if you go read reviews of Playlist Hunter or what's that? There's another one. One of them is by Burstamo. Is that Playlist Hunter? Playlist Supply.
Yep.
If you go read their reviews, you'll often see artists complaining that everyone they pitched to asked them for money.
We did a test. We just tested both and kind of tested both features. And then we downloaded loads of data, and then the gang and the shed heads all went and kind of pitched a load of tracks to them. And I think most of them you had to like most of the people on those lists you had to pay for. Yeah,
and so you shouldn't. I mean, that's it. The genuine playlisters tend to not put that contact detail in their description because, like music blogs, they don't want to be overwhelmed by a bunch of artists who are trying to pitch them. They're out there finding music their own ways, or using SubmitHub or Playlist Push or Groover or a combination of all of them. I think you'll actually find most playlisters are available on every single platform. So, it's don't pay. We're beating a dead horse here, but don't pay. Yeah.
We use Discord, and if you want to get your track in our playlist, you have to be in our Discord, and you submit it on Friday, and then Lars goes and listens to loads of them, and he chooses the best ones for our playlists. It's very simple.
And those people who put in the work to do that are genuinely looking for it. So then, it's a good filter for you to put in place.
Works a treat. Gets people in our Discord and builds our community in Discord, which is where we want everyone to be. It's a great place. Okay, so before we go into kind of I want to talk about the flow of a kind of release and just talk how you think it should work and how you submit Hub to make that release do its best. Let's just talk on new features, because I know you touched on it a minute ago. Is there any other new features coming? Did I read Marketplace?
Yeah, so there's the Marketplace. It's a bit of a natural evolution of SubmitHub, but we want to create Fiverr, but with quality control, if that makes sense. So Fiverr is a publicly traded company. They're huge, and I think they've sort of won at this game of microtasks. So you go on Fiverr and you can pay someone to do pretty much anything, and in the music space you can do that as well. But we've got a pretty good community on SubmitHub. There's almost 1 million registered users. There's a ton of people using it daily. We just feel like there's a natural evolution here to start offering other services on the platform. So you can actually see this up already, the early beta, but submithub.com/marketplace is allowing people to sign up as these task doers. So the first thing that we were trying to solve is album and EP reviews. That's something that people have been requesting since Submit Hub launched. The number of requests diminishes every year as people move away from that format and towards singles. But it's still something that people want. And so we're gonna allow in-depth EP and album reviews to be purchased through the marketplace. And I sort of touched on this earlier. There's also things like album artwork, Spotify canvases. If you're running Instagram and Facebook ads, you need digital assets as well to run there. YouTube lyric videos. So that's sort of the graphic side that we're looking at. Then on the audio side, there's mixing and mastering. We want to keep these to be sort of micro tasks, if you will. So the prices are never going to really exceed $100. That means that something like hiring someone to do your mix is probably out of the question. I think most people who do mixes charge a lot more money than that. But for mastering, for example, or maybe just a consultation on mixing, that's one of the things we're going to offer. So you basically hire someone for an hour to do a video chat with you, walk through your mix, give you tips, help you with your software, whatever it is, you can hire someone. So we've got this great community of musicians, record labels, and curators, and a lot of them have these skills that they can offer. And so we want to provide that to artists, because today, if you are a musician, launching a song requires you to basically dabble in so many different things. So a lot of indie artists are picking up these incredible generalist skills. Like they all know how to do Instagram and Facebook advertising. They all know how to do their merch, make artwork, make their song, release their song, upload it to Spotify, market it, do all of this stuff. And one of the problems that actually creates is, it's making you a generalist and giving you good skills, but you're distracting yourself from the core product that you're trying to sell. And so now you're no longer making music. And so that's where it's good to hire a label, right? A label will take care of many of these things for you. But there are, and every day there are more and more artists doing it themselves, right? And they're going through these courses and they're becoming generalists. So the idea of the marketplace is that we're going to essentially go through the list of all the things that an artist has to put in to releasing and offer them a curated list of people who can help them with those services. So it's rolling out slowly but surely.
That's very cool. Yeah, because you're right. There are, the biggest gripe you see on social media is I've got to buy the records and the decks and the blimmin'. I've got to do this and that. I've got to do that, and I've got to, you choose to. That's the big one, first one. But yes, you're right. They do have to do a lot of stuff, and it's great that you can hire people to do it for you, which is even better.
We'll see if it works, right? It's just a natural evolution. You got to keep trying things, and most of the systems on Submit Hub at this point work well enough that I have time. I have time to code these things. So here I am coding the next thing. Yeah.
Amazing. That's very cool. How, let's talk about the release. So let's talk about, say, I've got a release. It's coming out on Friday. It's coming out. It's a deep tech track. It's an absolute banger. How and when would I start using Submit Hub, and what's the best practices?
Well, if it's coming out on Friday, you waited too long, man. You got to start this sooner.
Okay.
Yeah. So look, multi-pronged approach, right? Submit Hub is just a piece of the puzzle. So the way that this fits in is Submit Hub can help make the process quite efficient and line up a lot of stuff in a short amount of time so that you can focus on all the other stuff you have to focus on. So cool. The two areas that I think are worth focusing on are the blog content. So this is where I would target RGB, the really good bloggers. And you can do this as far as a month beforehand. So the filters will, definitely. I mean, if you've been on Submit Hub as a curator, so you've seen that you have a whole bunch of filters you can tweak, including your preference for release dates. So you can say, I don't want any songs that are older than a month, but also only send me songs that are coming out within the next month. So the range that you can tweak there is quite a lot. Cool. And on the blog side, it's good to just line up those bottles before you get going. It doesn't matter when you do it. Like, you can do it 3 weeks before or the day before, because they can't share that song until it's actually ready. And very few blogs are going to pre-write the content. Most of them wait until release date. Then they know the song's available. It shows up in their queue as ready to share, and then they go ahead and publish it. So it's totally fine to do it later, but it's nice to just line that up earlier so that you know that those things are sort of given. It's all lined up. Cool. I've got 5 blog posts. They're going to come out hopefully within a couple of days of release. And boom, that's how it's taken care of. So the blog post angle is good for SEO. So you want to make sure that when your release comes out and someone searches for it on Google, it's not just coming up with, a Spotify link, a YouTube link, and a Bandcamp link. It's also coming up with some content written about you. And that'll also help contribute to artist searches. Unless you've got a name that is very difficult to search for, you can help sort of bolster those search results. So if your name is Surroundabout, or Surround Sound, Surroundabout.
Surround sound.
Yeah. So in terms of things that you want to provide the bloggers, planeted, you're gonna want to fill out your bio on Submit Hub and also provide some information about the song itself. So we give you options to do both of those. But if I'm writing a blog post, I want to know who you are, what your history is, and why you released the song or what went into it. So those are kind of the things that I'm looking for. And maybe some assets. Again, these are all things that you can upload through Submit Hub. There are some blogs that are very picky about really requiring it. And maybe one of the flaws in Submit Hub is that we don't push you through that flow until you're actually done with your submission. So the whole editing your artist profile happens when your submission is complete. And it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. My logic there is that I don't want people to get too distracted on filling out their artist bio. I want them to actually submit because that's the core product at play. So if you're doing blog posts, it is important to have something to write about. It doesn't have to be a ton, but you can use the Submit Hub marketplace to pay someone to help write your artist bio. Bing!
Nice.
Soon, coming soon. Cool. Trademark registered.
That's very cool.
So those are good bits of information to have on the blog side. Yeah.
Indie Music Center says, as a blogger, his schedule is almost full for December. Even have some busy Fridays for January already. For Spotify players, it's okay to submit the song when it's out. That's very cool. Oh, yeah, my December's full already for uploads. I think I've got
with Indie Shuffle, we don't do that. We when we find a song we like, we share it. But
we do that on our playlists.
We're very freewheeling. Yeah,
we do that on our playlist, but I haven't got time to. I don't have time to do that anymore. Unfortunately, I'd love to sit writing blog posts about records, but I just don't have the time. Unfortunately.
So one clue you could look at on Submit Hub is the turnaround time. So we show that with every single curator who's on there, but the metric is how long from the time of approval does it take for them to actually share the song? So in the case of Indie Music Center, they are, let's see, turnaround time, 4 hours. So, wow. Geez, that's really fast. Yeah. So I guess what's happening there, if I were to, and they can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm guessing that all these scheduled ones are actually lined up. Lined up for release date, and that's also when it comes out on release date. You've got that in your calendar, and you share it straight away on release date. So that's actually really awesome for artists because, of course, you want your content to go up on release date. It sucks to have to wait for a couple of weeks for the post to actually get blogged. So everything's written while we're listening to the song and then scheduled. Wow. I do not think that's the norm, but that's a very efficient way of doing it. I got to be honest.
Very cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, I should do that. I sit on mine for too long. But anyway, for me, if I'm an artist, music blogs are less about release day and more just about getting that written content that I can use down the line for my SEO, for my press kit, for quotes on. You can even use a blog review, take a snippet out of it that was written for a totally different song a year ago, and still put it on your pitch. You see publicists do this all the time when they're pitching a new song. They take quotes from blogs about the artist, being like, this is the next big thing in the alt pop scene or whatever. It's the quote. It's not actually about that song. It's something that they've pulled from this. And if you want to be super duper what's the resourceful here, you could actually just pull quotes from your declined feedback too, because you find a lot of people write what I call compliment sandwiches, where they'll start out their feedback with, "Hey, I really like the way the guitars came in at the chorus, but unfortunately the vocals aren't working for me." And you just take that little bit, like, "Oh, they love the guitars, cool. Put that on your press release, indie shuffle, boom, done." So there are ways to do it. And so all of this is to say that for me today, music blogs are, I don't think you should worry as much about the timing. It's nice to line it up early, but you're probably not going to get all of them as quickly as Indie Music Center can pump it out.
Very cool. Yeah, we only write about stuff that's being uploaded now. Unless we're uploading it, we're just not writing about it. And the only other thing we're going to do is put it in a playlist, which works for us. If we like it enough, we'll put it in a playlist for the stuff we're not writing about. But the music we're even thinking about putting on the site has to work for us and build the channels across YouTube and SoundCloud. And we're doing, like I said, we do we can do up to 8 premieres a day across all 4 channels, so that's enough to be writing about every day.
Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot.
Especially lots of it
on the Spotify side. This one again, I would submit in advance. Spotify, the timing is more important. So I think, I'm not an expert here. I know a little bit. But my understanding is that the momentum of the song within the first few days is crucial in terms of how Spotify's algorithms treat the song, where they show it, how many people they expose the song to. And so when your song is released on Spotify, you want that traction to come there and then. It's true that you can submit to a Spotify playlist at any time and you might still pick up those listeners. But for me, most of these independent playlists and whatnot, even the editorial ones, you get this boost while you're on the playlist and then it disappears. And a lot of them are passive listeners who aren't necessarily engaging with the song or interested in it. So as a small independent artist, your biggest gains are probably in attempting to game Spotify's algorithm. And I know you've done some videos on this, so you might know even more than me. But like as Joe Schmo, right? Your chance of getting into the big editorial playlist is very limited. There are lots of editorial playlists these days, but even when you do get into them, they're not necessarily going to blow you up. So yeah, my understanding is that the timing is important here. And so I would line up your submissions to Spotify playlists probably about a week before. And what's cool about SubmitHub is something I coded about 2 or 3 months ago, is that the songs now automatically share. So if we spoke about this from one of the early problems I had to solve, where the flow as a blogger is I approve a song, it goes into my queue, and then I mark it as shared. For years, we've had that with Spotify as well. I approve a song, goes into my feed, and then I mark it as shared. And all the playlisters were like wondering or asking, like, why do I have to do that extra step? Can't I just, approve means put it in the playlist? It's like, there, just one flow. It's right there. The song's already out. Why do I have to do this? You're wasting my time. And so what I ended up coding a few months ago was the ability to instantly share these songs. And if they're not released, then you just schedule it to be automatically shared on release date. So let's say that you're an indie artist and you submit your song to 30 or 40 playlists, and 5 to 10 of them pick you up because it's a pretty good song. You can have it set so that all of them are going to automatically share on release day when the song comes out. And that's going to get you your boost the day of. So that delay on the Spotify side, we've sort of eliminated in a way. And the hope here is that you're sending a strong signal to Spotify in terms of people's interest in the new song, because they really are looking at songs that are growing within the first week or two, right? That's what goes into release radar and that type of stuff. So yeah, on the Spotify side, I think a week before is totally fine. You absolutely can do it years after the release date if you want. And people do. I just don't see. This reminds me, people often come along trying to prove that SubmitHub's a scam, and they do it by submitting classics. Like, I'm going to submit Stairway to Heaven and see how many people reject this. And invariably they do get rejected, because not everyone likes Stairway to Heaven, especially the demographic of, like 18 to Most Spotify playlisters are younger, right? I think I mentioned bloggers probably skew a bit older in age, and Spotify playlisters tend to skew a little younger in age. And they're not all going to like Stairway to Heaven. And then people come up and they're like, I nailed it. Proof Submit Hub's a total scam. Not everyone approved Stairway to Heaven. I'm like, well, yeah, got it. You busted us. Yeah.
Do you have any tips? Skeleton Keys asks, do you have any tips to how to get playlisters on Submit Hub interested with the pitch? Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah. So the quick pitch, it's something that we ask you to fill in. It's your chance to just write a few words to try and entice the curators. It's shown very prominently on your feed. So when a song comes through as a curator, the quick pitch is something that I see right under the song title. And then I see a whole bunch of other information like the similar artists and yada, yada, yada. But the quick pitch is right there. And so it really varies from curator to curator in terms of what they're looking for. You can customize each quick pitch to reference them by name. It's a lot of extra work. It probably can help a little bit. So it depends how much time you have on your hands. The information I would put in there, we see sometimes people say, hey, if you share my song, I'll make sure to share it with my fans. So it's like a little bit of a bribe or something. It works. It works sometimes, right? There's no harm in trying. And there are definitely people out there who will be more inclined to share your content if they know that you're going to scratch their back in return. So that's one thing you can do. So Indie Music Center, just give an extreme example. If you don't share, I'll hang myself. Sympathy stories tend to actually not work that well. Just in general. I see this. I do see it as well. Like, hey, I wrote this song after my dog died and, it was a really tough time in my life. Yeah, I just reminded me of when my dog died and I just don't want to be here doing this. So it's not a good approach, I would say.
Yeah, I don't think. I think. Yeah, if you don't share, I'll hang myself. I think I'd be asking them if they're okay. Like I'd be like, are you okay?
Yeah. Look, you can get creative with it. I don't think there's one tried and true answer. I think playing it safe isn't going to help you much. Doing something, you can experiment with it. I mean, you can write these quick pitches on the free ones too. Not all of the curators are going to even read them, but you could totally experiment with things there. Tell me a joke, maybe a cheese joke. You could tell me a cheese joke. Yes. Maybe that'll help. I don't know.
Put a cheese fact in. Holy moly, where's the cheese guy gone? Wow.
So those types of things can help. Here's another pro tip. Let's say that you have a history on Submit Hub and you've been approved and shared before. One of the worst things you could do is skip the submission process and you have these chats that open between you and the people who approved you, right? If you go there and you send them your song via chat, it tends to get a negative response. However, if you send them the song through the normal approach, but then tell them on chat, hey, Jason, just a heads up, I've sent you my new single. Hopefully you'll find it in your feed. That is actually a great thing for me because A, probably do want to hear it. I've blogged you before. And B, you've respected my submission process. And C, you've told me to go and look for this before one of my teammates gets to the queue as well. So that's a good insider tip once you've got those relationships going. I think a complaint I've seen before about Submit Hub is that some people believe it's a very impersonal process and it takes the connections out of it. And I don't know how true that is because really those connections when you were rejected weren't there to be had in the first place. It's essentially the curator saying, I don't want to be friends with you. And when they do approve your song, then the connection can happen. And those chats don't close. They're still there. They're still open. And so if you are coming back with a new single, it's nice to just say, hey, hope you don't miss my single. It's in your feed. So that's an insider pro tip, which is probably better than using a quick pitch.
That's very cool. Could I review my submissions live? Could I if I had on a Friday, I've got 2 hours. Yeah. I could do a live stream where I would just review my submissions live, and we could actually do hot or not in the chat, gang. That'd be quite funny.
Hot or not, absolutely fine. submissions, probably a bit dodgier. I can't stop you from doing it, but I would worry A, about the copyright stuff, and B,
We don't care about that.
about unreleased material. So if your submissions are unreleased songs, but you're streaming them on here, that could be fairly upsetting to the artists who sent it to you. So when people have asked me in the past about whether they can stream on Twitch or Instagram or whatever, I am inclined to say no. Whereas the songs on Hot or Not they're being submitted for public consumption. Hot or Not is open to anyone with an account. And so I think that one is 100% kosher. You just got to deal with whatever Twitch does in terms of their copyright stuff. I don't know what their deal is. But yeah, generally the feed, probably not best to do.
Okay.
Oh, and yeah, sorry. Just to clarify, Hot or Not is not necessarily for released music. You can do unreleased. And what you actually see is a lot of people will submit unfinished songs to try and get a feel for whether people are enjoying it or not. So
yeah, we do that on Monday. We do that on
also
Monday. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so that's only the same as what we do on Mondays anyway. Unreleased stuff, unreleased demos. So that's only what we do anyway. Okay, that's
Some people will submit 2 versions of the same track and see which one performs better. There are people who use it in creative ways. I mean, this is one of those things where I built a simple thing and then people figured out what to do with it.
Yeah, we could use it for demos. We could do it. No, I like the Discord submission. We've got something that works. We'll just keep that. I was just trying to think.
Do it. The Discord also keeps them tied to you.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of ways we could start using the system again because I just haven't got the time. But then I have got time with 2 hours a week on a. Like I like the demo thing. It works for us for our labels because it means I get to listen to demos and it fills in the time and we sign loads of music and it makes a stream and it kind of like ticks loads of boxes all in one go. And we've been thinking about what we're doing on Fridays for releases or just from a kind of second demo stream, but maybe a release stream. But if it's
what about a live streamed album review where you listen to an album live and you actually provide feedback as you listen to it? So that
we do that. We do that normally with the artist live. We will sit and listen to them and talk to them about the person we interview them live.
That's pretty dope.
We did that with Jean-Michel Jarre recently, which was pretty sick.
Yeah, I mean, it's an option, right? I don't think the regular submissions are going to be the right way for you that. No. But the marketplace could fill a niche where you are effectively doing that. And I hadn't thought. I mean, it is written reviews, but there could definitely be a category where it's live. Reaction videos, if you will.
Yeah, that works. Okay, cool. Interesting. Gang in the chat, have you got any questions? I do that with some artists. They through Zoom live feedback sessions. That's a good concept. Yeah. As a coder, has it been a hard transition to has it been a hard transition to having a successful business?
I suppose that question can be taken a few ways, but no, it's actually really awesome to have people interacting with and using your product. So I'm a self-taught coder, but I do know a lot of coders. And one of my really good friends is a serial entrepreneur constantly trying startups, and none of them have taken off. And I would imagine that that's harder to be coding something that people aren't using, whereas I'm like living the dream in a way. And that's actually how I test most of my code too, which I'm sure people who've been on there long enough have noticed. I'll roll stuff out and just wait for people in the chat rooms to go, hey, is this broken for anyone else? And I'm like, oh shit. So it's a really good like professional companies have what's it called, a QA, quality assurance. So they do code reviews before you launch it. And the idea of launching code to production when it hasn't been reviewed or a second pair of eyes haven't looked at it is I think would make some professionals roll over in their graves. But that's what I do. I mean, I'm the only coder on Cement Hub. I'm the only one who understands it. The day I have to introduce someone to the code base is going to be anyway
fun times.
Those is this normal things in the Music Center. Those are actually the best things, because in a way you are my QA and you're helping me sort through this. And also it's really great to have people coming through and asking for features, suggesting things. I don't always say yes, but a lot of the Submit Hub that you see today is built on people's feature requests and upgrades and things that they're looking for. So, the example I gave of the instant Spotify sharing came because so many people were going, why do I have to do this? So yeah, it's actually really cool and really rewarding to be coding on a platform that has a user base. Yeah.
Just very cool. SK Wi-Fi. That's a weird name. Are there any good marketing methods on TikTok without filming my face?
Graham, you might be well positioned to answer this. Haven't you?
Yeah,
You've done some stuff.
I mean, go on my YouTube channel. There's a whole lot of videos on how to make content, and definitely one about using your face.
You literally have one that says DJs and producers don't use your face, right?
Yeah. I literally have one. Yeah. So go on my YouTube. If you type YouTube, there's a whole ton of content on there to help you with that. Harvest. Why should I use Summit Hub and continue to pay playlisters when I can pay the same amount of money directly to a curator and get more streams?
I don't see that question, but we've touched on that a few times, right?
Yeah. This is kind of we collect them up and put them in the doc, so I'll have them in my doc.
Oh, right. To summarize, you're violating Spotify's terms. You're exposing yourself to a playlister who is very likely to be engaged in some sort of untoward activity in terms of how they have grown their playlist. Actually, it's those two, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and chances are that their playlist is in many cases, it's not focused on a niche. It's just whoever's willing to pay to get in, which means that your song is going to be presented alongside other songs that they're not in the same genre, and they might also be pretty bad.
There you go. Okay, out of kind of working on playlists and Submit Hub, how do you spend your downtime? What do you like doing? What do you like outside of music? Because I know a lot of things become working in music is kind of you start with your passion, and then you're like, it's your passion, and you do it because it's your passion, but then you kind of need to take a break from your passion. So what do you do outside of music?
Well, this is the personal round. I got two kids.
Nice.
So that keeps me busy. I've recently I joined a cricket team. So I've been playing quite a bit of cricket,
Sick.
which is not as easy as it used to be. My body is falling apart, but I'm trying to use Jimmy Anderson as my inspiration here. He's 40 years old and still bowling for England. So what else do I do? I've started playing piano again.
No way.
So that's been fun. Yeah. Just because, I did it when I was a kid. Both my parents are classical musicians. So music has always been around, and I want to make sure that my kids also go through that experience of loathing piano, having to learn an instrument. Because I think it is valuable at the end.
My mum learnt piano, and she says loathing. She learnt piano, and she says she loathed it at one point.
Yeah, you do. It's when you start to hit 11, 12, 13, and you feel like you have that independence and control, and I didn't choose to do this, and I don't want to do this, and this isn't cool, and you're telling me what to do. It gets difficult there. But I started when I was 5, and I played until I was about 15. So I got a good 10 years of experience there. And it's actually, I think it's very valuable in terms of forcing you through something you don't want to do. So it teaches you that sort of that patience and resilience to actually do it and get it done. And, not enjoying this, but I'm going to get through it. That's just practice. Most people hate practicing, but yeah, that was it. And today it's actually nice to be able to pick it up and play again. I enjoy it. I'm definitely not as good as I once was, but I'm slowly dusting off all the pieces I learned when I was a teenager. And I think Sir Roundabout Round Sound is right. The muscle memory is there because, there I am playing like Satie or Beethoven, and it's amazing to me that the songs, I've got this book that has all the classics in it, and it rates how difficult they are. And I can play all the ones that are 3 or 4 out of 5 stars, but then when it comes to the 2 out of stars ones, I'm like, how is this a 2 out of 5? And the other ones, so it's the muscle memory. I think I can just play those still from when I was a teenager.
As one of the places in the world that's got the most roundabouts in the whole entire world, Milton Keynes. I love that you're calling him Mr. Roundabout. It's absolutely hilarious.
God, your roundabouts. I was driving around there in July. I drove from Bath to somewhere north, and I couldn't believe how many fucking roundabouts you had. Jesus,
mate, you want to come to Milton Keynes? It's got probably the most in the world. We literally have one every other block.
Yeah,
we love them.
Look, they're
here.
safe. They're safe.
We have loads.
They really
of them.
do help.
MK is not the worst; it's the greatest. Anyway, okay. What? So soon on the marketplace for XX credits, you'll be playing the piano for the next track. Wow, yeah, you could have a piano version. That'd be sick.
Yeah, if you want to get rejected by a lot of people, sure.
Strange. Oh yeah, what is the strangest playlist you've seen? That's funny. I think I saw one was called "Music to Make Spaghetti Bolognese To" one time. That was a pretty funny one.
That is very specific. I bet people search for that.
I think it had like 500,000 listeners as well. 500,000 followers.
Wow, that's crazy. I can't think of any. The thought popping into my head is avoid those playlists that have soundtracks. So a lot of people try to take advantage of soundtrack names. So Stranger Things Season 5 soundtrack, which literally has no songs from the soundtrack, and they're just trying to hit those keyword searches. So steer clear of those. But no, I can't think of any.
That's a good one.
I can't think of any.
Just thinking, because obviously you see a lot of playlists. Do you have any advice for setting up your playlists? Like a lot of our kind of DJs could be playlist curators as well. A lot of my course members actually have started playlists since being on my course, have built them using ads, and are now actually on Submit Hub as a curator because they've come from having no playlist to write a decent playlist. So have you got any kind of tips for building playlists and kind of, like you mentioned earlier about numbers but names and yeah.
Look, for me, one of the most important things is it's got to be a good playlist, and I think you should stick to a sound or a style. If that means creating multiple different playlists, that's fine. But if you're doing organic house with a Middle Eastern twist, stick to organic house with a Middle Eastern twist. That's what people tend to come to your playlist for, and that's your strong suite. It can also help you with that SEO. So when you are thinking about creating a playlist and you're trying to figure out what playlist title to use, searching for that to see what shows up is a good strategy. You don't want to give your playlist name something that's so generic that you're going to show up as number 70 on the list when they search for that, because much like Google search results, it's the top 3 or 5 that get all the clicks. So this is actually something we look at quite a lot when people apply. We check to see what position their playlists have for search terms. So when we see the playlist name, we just go look up some of the keywords. If it says, it's spaghetti bolognese, we'll go search for spaghetti bolognese and see, does this come up as number 1? And what we're trying to see there is whether the listener counts make sense. So a playlist that shows up high in search results is going to tend to have a higher engagement for listeners. So today that's going to be a lot more difficult, right? We've got years and years and years of people trying to game this and take advantage of it. You actually see these Jason's roundabout adventures. That's going to be a hit. We've seen a lot of people who report playlists. This is a very malicious tactic that gets used, but you can report any playlist on Spotify for violating copyright. So that would mean that the image that they uploaded as the cover image is using copyrighted content. There's actually just a button you can click to report it. And what Spotify does is they instantly take that playlist offline without reviewing it.
Wow.
And they won't reinstate the playlist until the playlister reaches back out and begs and pleads and hopes to get it back on. And so what you'll see is that people will go through and report playlists that are competing with them on these keywords. So if it is spaghetti bolognese and your playlist is number 3, you can report playlist number 1 and 2. They'll disappear instantly, and boom, now you're the top search result for it. And Spotify doesn't seem to have very many checks and balances. However, you cannot report a verified playlister, and that blue check mark is elusive and difficult to get your hands on, but people have it. It's possible. So SEO is important, so much so that there are people out there abusing the system to boost their own rank. So yeah, that's why I would say don't go for the big words. Try to find a niche or a new genre or something sort of cutting edge. I mean, I remember where left field bass was suddenly, what even is this? But that's a good type of thing to target. So yeah, that's what that's cool. I'm thinking about what I'm gonna set up with the playlist. Those are the things I would think about.
We need a 130 disco playlist, gang. I should start that. We started a whole new genre. It's called 130 disco. It's basically disco at 130 BPM. And we've created a whole new genre, and we're people in the chat are making music for this one new genre.
I think there you go. You got it. It's probably not a very popular search term. Disco. Nothing on playlists.
Amazing.
Disco 130 BPM by Smarty70. There are 3 playlists.
No way! It's actually a thing. Wow.
Yeah, and you could totally, I bet you could do it.
Wow.
It's all the same. What is this? It's someone who's just ramped everything up to a higher BPM. They've taken classics. I don't even know.
And
Disco Super Hits Dance Workout. 130 BPM mixed workout music ideal for step. 2014, you guys. New genre. Wow. Come on.
Wow. Someone's actually already done. Wow, that's amazing. I didn't even research it.
How many followers did it have?
We made it up.
Does Spotify not show followers anymore? They don't? No, that's the place. It's got 67 followers. You could totally smush them.
Yeah, we could smush them. Yeah, what music are you listening to?
Well, it all depends on mood. I tend to be probably my most played artist these days is Bonobo, and has been for many years. So that's sort of would you class that as down tempo? I don't know. Multi-instrumentalist down tempo. I don't know. Yeah, but lo-fi house also something that I listen to a lot. It's great for coding. Play that in the background. Just goes. The songs don't steal your attention. They all tend to have a similar rhythm. Yeah. So I will often just listen to that on loop.
That's funny. I have certain albums when I'm writing YouTube video scripts. I literally listen to certain albums, and always when I write something, that's quite funny. But it's not lo-fi. It's more like band and guitars and mad. Different songs for different moods. Mad.
Like most of the stuff I blog is more band driven. But then most of what I listen to is anyway. If I'm working, it tends to not have vocals.
That's cool. Wicked. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for this. It's been really good fun and really good. And thanks for all the tips. And let's get on. I hope it helps you, gang, in the chat. Thank you for being here. It's been great fun to speak to you and see you. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, man. It's been fun.
If you found this interview interesting, consider giving it a like and a comment. It helps with the YouTube algorithm, and let me know your biggest takeaway below. Don't forget to follow me on Twitch. I'm back on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and you can check out the schedule from the link below as well to see who's coming up in my interview series. I'll see you in the next Twitch stream or the next YouTube video. I'll see you soon. Bye.